say. Scott wants a bigger one. Everything's blurry to me anyways, it doesn't matter.
You don't broadcast on high def, it doesn't show it.
Good evening. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call our regular council meeting on Monday, May 12th to order. I'm Mayor McNeil Smith. Colleagues at council are to my far left, Councillor Novick, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor O'Toole. To my far right, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Gurnett. Good evening to members of staff in attendance this evening, and good evening and welcome to members of the public in attendance, as well as those who may be speaking. I want to respectfully acknowledge that we're holding our meeting, and indeed the entire town of Sydney is in the territory of the WSÁNEĆ people, and we want to acknowledge the Sayote Nation, the Sartlam Nation, the Pakwichan Nation, the Sakem Nation, and the Malahat Nation, who have been stewards of these lands for millennia, that is thousands of years. And we respect that we need to continue to work together to steward these lands for not only our current generation, but future generations. In turning to approval of the agenda, there are 5 changes since the agenda was published last Thursday, and I'll run through them fairly quickly. 4D2 under presentations was going to be a presentation from Truckmasters Car Show. We won't have a presentation this evening, but members of the club have made themselves available to take any questions when that does come up on the agenda, and we appreciate that. We did have, under item 13A, the Community Wildlife Resilience, the Community Wildlife Resiliency Plan is item 13A. That includes a presentation from a consultant as well as staff, and we're going to move that from item 13A to item 4D2, so it will be a presentation after the Mary Winspear Centre presentation. The third change is Councillor O'Keefe has requested providing an update as our liaison to the Sydney Museum. That will come under number 11. We have an additional piece of correspondence was item 15.1 under correspondence from information was a letter from Sarah Waddington, and staff did provide a response, and that response from our CAO, Mr. Edwards, is now included in the agenda. And lastly, I would like to raise item 15.4, which is a letter from Correspondence for Information, which is a letter from Kathy Yonker regarding pets in our court facilities. I would move that to item 14A. And with those changes, I would look for motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Councillor Novick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. We're now turning to public participation, where we welcome and invite members of the public to come forward. You will have up to 4 minutes to speak to council on any matter on the agenda or otherwise. And I'll call for a first time if anyone would like to come forward. Please come forward. If you can provide your name, the municipality that you reside in, there's a little button at the back of the microphone that will make it live. You'll see it turn red just at the bottom of the microphone stand.
Oh, there.
There we go.
Sorry. My name is Alison Kershaw, and I live in Sydney at the north end of Resthaven Drive. I am here to express my concerns to council relating to major safety issues on Resthaven Drive caused by increased housing density with inadequate parking, free on-street parking, high traffic volumes, speed limits frequently being ignored, and lack of bylaw enforcement. Resthaven Drive serves as an evacuation route in the event of an earthquake or a tsunami. It's a major bus route, and it provides access to North Saanich Middle School, Parkland Secondary School, and Patricia Bay Highway. Resthaven Drive, heading north from the tennis courts, is effectively a one-lane road because of so much on-street parking. Buses can't pass each other. Most vehicles travel along the yellow line in the middle of the road. I recently witnessed what could have been a very serious head-on collision right in front of my house, with traffic trying to pass a bus stopped to unload and load passengers. Both my husband and I have almost been hit by traffic travelling too fast along Resthaven, and a couple of days ago I was nearly hit by a couple of cyclists while I was crossing at the crosswalk with the lights flashing. They were very apologetic, but they couldn't see me because of all the on-street parking reducing their visibility. The major cause for concern results from the recent Melville Parkway development, where 23 townhouses replaced 3 single-family dwellings. Each townhouse has 1 garage, no visitor parking. Residents with 2 or more vehicles on Resthaven Drive park free of charge, but at a cost to the taxpayers of Sydney. On the Realtor app, one of the townhouses currently listed for sale is touted as having a vast amount of parking nearby, and you'll see it in the material that we have prepared. Also, 2 residents of Melville Parkway regularly park large industrial vehicles on Resthaven Drive. 1 resident regularly parks a large private white van in front of any residential house on Resthaven. As a result, visibility for both pedestrians and drivers is greatly reduced. In addition, we often see people parking on Resthaven and then taking their luggage to the bus stop to travel to the ferry terminal. Often we and our neighbours cannot see safely to back out of our own driveways. We cannot safely cross the road to go to our mailbox, and there are 64 community mailboxes right next door to the bus stop, or to go for a walk in the park because of the poor visibility on Resthaven Drive. And those of us who live north of the entrance to Resthaven by the sea are in danger because we are living near to a section of the road that functions as a blind corner. This also causes considerable danger to those crossing Resthaven to and from Melville Park, with the chance of an accident occurring having gone up considerably since COVID, when the number of dog walkers and dogs in the area has undergone a huge increase. I'm proposing the following solutions for council to consider, and these have all been talked about by local residents I have met. Introduce substantial parking charges for anyone who parks on Resthaven Drive without a permit. The penalty for parking without a permit should be considerable. There needs to be a crosswalk with flashing lights from the bus stop on the west side of Resthaven Drive to Resthaven Park. There is no sidewalk on the west side of Resthaven, so anyone using the bus stop must cross Resthaven without benefit of a crosswalk, where the road curves and the traffic is travelling at 50 kilometres per hour. Parking should be limited one side of Resthaven Drive, the side that already has a sidewalk, so at least there is some hope of seeing oncoming traffic. Please see attached maps, which you've all been given. The area from the tennis courts to McDonald Park Road and White Birch Road, and the issues connected to access to Resthaven by the sea. Please note, we are not opposed to densification, but we are very opposed to densification with inadequate parking. We urge council to increase the minimum parking requirements in future developments, as it seems that developers will always go for the minimum parking requirement set out by the town of Sydney. Finally, I must comment on the irony that the town of Sydney is taking measures to calm the traffic on Bowerbank, which sees a fraction of the traffic using Resthaven. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before council.
Thank you, Ms. Kershaw, for coming forward this evening. I do want to acknowledge that we received your correspondence, your letter, by email. It is included in the agenda package under correspondence for information. The information that you provided to councillors in this package just before the meeting will become part of that correspondence.
And my husband is going to make another bit of a presentation.
This is just walk you through the 2 maps we prepared. The first one
just for the record, if you could please provide your name.
I beg your pardon. Adrian Kershaw, live at number 10466 Resthaven Drive. The first map shows all existing developments outlined in red, and the two proposed developments outlined in blue. The lower one is currently under construction. And in addition, the problems generated by all of that traffic coming from all of those developments is exacerbated by the large number of traffic coming from North Saanich now, with the development of the condos and the three large condo buildings, apartment buildings, just a bit further past Parkland School. Yeah, and so what's happened is we've had about 130 new dwellings built or about to be built since we moved here in 2003. And there are now well over, so there's 130 at least buildings put up since we moved there, and there are now well over 130 on North Saanich, and we've got no control over those, right? So that's that, and then the second is about the traffic issues connected directly with our house and the parks. And you'll see there that there's a proposal to put in a crosswalk that Alison talked about, and it'll show you how everything sort of ties together. Our concern is that unless something's done soon, somebody will get injured or even worse. So I would encourage you to focus on this over the next 2 or 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kershaw. And again, that's under correspondence for information. Council was not planning on having a discussion on it this evening, but that does not preclude us from having a discussion at a future meeting. Please come forward. Good evening.
My name is Bill Brooks, 101-9906 Rest Haven Drive. Before I get into what I came for, I concur with what they said. I would gladly pay for a residential permit to limit all of the other parkers. Anyway, the reason I'm here, I'm here representing Cycling Without Age Society in town, and I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for again sponsoring or providing a donation to our organization. I remember in 2019, I believe it was Steve and I that came cap in hand that year. We got a donation from that council, and that was enough for our liability insurance. If it wasn't for the town of Sydney, I don't know whether we would be going today. Certainly not to the same we are. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of data before I go. 2019 we did 95 rides. Last year we went up to 875 rides. Year to date, if you can believe this, in 4.5 months we have put on just under 3,000 kilometers driving people around Sydney, and each one of these are something like 5-kilometer trips. We've done over 400 rides by the end of April. We're projected to do somewhere around 1,200 or 1,300 rides this year. We've gone from 1 trishaw in 2019, we've got 6 now, plus we've just purchased a wheelchair bike. So anybody that has friends that are wheelchair bound, we would be very happy to take them out. We went from Steve and Sarah and myself, I think, as pilots back in 2019. We've got over 40 now. We've got 4 more coming on before the end of the month. We'll do something like 4,000 volunteer hours this year. We serve 2 schools, 7 care homes, plus by June we'll be doing somewhere around 10 to 12 rides every week from just people in the community. This would not be possible without the generous support financially, but also just your support. I know each one of you have been talking about us in a positive manner, and that just goes so far. I'm sure there's other people that want to talk, so I'll go. I just want to once again say thank you very much for your donation. It is going to a good cause, and there's a lot of people that otherwise would be homebound that would not be out on the streets. Bad choice of words.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you,
There you
Mr.
go.
Brooks.
Okay.
We appreciate coming forward and acknowledging the relatively small contribution that council has made on, successive councils have made on behalf of taxpayers to support the good work you're doing in the community. And it was nice to see in the newspaper the article on featuring the new wheelchair trishaw. So
Yeah.
continued success.
I didn't see it. I'll have to look. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll call for a second time. Anyone wishing to come forward to speak to council, please come forward. Yeah, it's a tricky microphone, just a little button at the base there.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for all you do. My name is Brian Moran, and I live at 10470B Resthaven Drive. And I just want to talk about the flow of traffic along Resthaven Drive, and particularly improvements that I think could be made from CM Harbor entrance to the wharf to the bend at the end of the park area there. Now, I did measure from the edge of the curb to the fence line along the front of Resthaven Park is about 30 feet. And I suggested to possibly moving the sidewalk back 5 feet, and I don't think you'd be infringing on the park at all, and create recessed parking. There's a couple of telephone poles there, so you wouldn't be able to have parking the whole way, but there's quite a few areas from the entrance to CM Harbor where they could put the recessed parking in, and all the other areas to where the bend is would be painted yellow. And I think that would make a difference, at least along that section. And I know farther along where the newest development is, on the right-hand side, just before McDonald Park Road, there is some recessed parking there. And I think that would probably go a long ways, just one little aspect to improve that flow along there. And the other issue I would like to talk about, and that's the bus stop on the south side of Resthaven Drive. And there's only the sidewalk on the north side. So if you do have a wheelchair or a walker and you're coming from McDonald Park Road to the bus stop, you have 2 choices. You either have to walk along the sidewalk and then cross right at where the bend is, or you've got to come along the road and walk around the cars that are parked along the road, which is really not safe. I mean, you could, I guess, cut through Melville Park and come around, but the bark chip trail, I don't think people would, really want to be going through there with walkers and wheelchairs and that. So it's an obvious place for some sort of crosswalk there, with one of the warning lights. I noticed when I was coming in Resthaven, the warning lights that are there are unbelievably, really you see them right away as soon as they start flashing. And I think it makes a huge difference. I mean, from a block away you can see them, and the power, if they're solar, you don't have to really worry about, if the power's on one side of the street or the other. But I think that's the second suggestion I have, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moran, for coming forward this evening.
Thank you.
And I'll call for a third and final time if anyone's wishing to come forward this evening. Seeing none, I'll close the public participation period and we're now moving to presentations, and pleased to invite Denny Warner, Executive Director of the Mary Winspear Centre, and Sheila Fay, Board Chair, and other directors to this evening's meeting.
Yeah, it was here. Oh. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Oops. Now you've already seen it. I can sit down. All right. Good evening. I'm pleased to be here this evening to update council on our 2024 operations. And I wanted to introduce the board members that are here with us this evening. So we've got Sheila Fay, we've got one of our newest board members, Catherine Kreisler, we've got Bev Elder, and Ryan Trafford, who chose not to sit with us. Nice. Yeah, so thank you. We had a photographer come this year and take some photos of our building and inside, and a lot of those will be used on our website, but we're really pleased with the work he did. So if anyone's looking for some architectural photos, or he does also land and mammals and things, we have got a good recommendation. There are very few people in my roaming around and talking to people who live in this community who've not attended something at the Mary Winspear Centre. And I just wanted at this point to express my appreciation to the visionaries who worked tirelessly to see the centre realized way back in the late 90s. As I've put here, when you look at sort of the breadth of experiences that happen at the centre, there are no other places that I can think of that brings the kinds of people together in a community like the Mary Winspear Centre does. So it's my great honor, actually, to work there. It's one of the best places I could imagine working. Not to mention the positive impact, financial impact that the centre has on the community. I don't know how many people saw the dancers that were in town this weekend, but there were thousands and thousands of dancers in the community. Just for example, I don't know how many you saw that when there was the fairy and fantasy fair in April. So I did hear a lot about the fairies that were around town too. People wanted to know what all of that was about. But yeah, we would seriously need to pretty much double our size to accommodate all the requests that we get for space and theater rentals. So we'll keep that in mind when we're considering the future. First, I guess I should probably acknowledge the good news that we received in March, that our charitable statuses were reinstated for the Memorial Park Society and Mary Winspear Centre Foundation. The applications to CRA for organizations of our size are not undertaken by the faint of heart. It truly took a patient village and an age to accomplish. And I don't want to say that it was just me, but that since I took over, we have had 2 particularly good years. So, and I just don't want people to get their hopes up, because there are some uncertain economic climate and things that might impact our attendance at shows and that kind of thing. So also some increasing expenses. So we're not anticipating a gain of anything close to what we had in 2024 or 2023, but we're expecting that it will still be a fairly decent year. And just to give people an idea, see some things of some formatting things there. For that actual net cash gain of the $449,778, our plans are to funnel that into funding some of the capital upgrades throughout the building that have been identified throughout the building and by our various departments, and anything else remaining will be set up in our reserves. And just to give you a little bit of background on some of the activities that have happened this year, we in the theater continue to see sold out audiences at many of our events, and we're excited to continue to build audiences for some more diverse programming. You may have noticed some of the activities that have been scheduled lately include some blues, jazz, classical, and theater performances that we actually presented. Our audience feedback supports the continuation of that programming and supporting artists who might not otherwise have opportunities to perform in the Capital Regional District. There are not very many locations for artists to perform, and our theater kind of represents a unique niche in its size. So we have a lot of people reaching out for space to perform. You might notice that the percentage of the sold out shows has decreased a little from the last year, and that is a representation of the maybe more experimental programming that was undertaken this year. It takes a while to build loyal audiences who trust the programming, and so we have taken some chances this year, and some were well received and some maybe less so. But now that the charitable status has been returned, we will be receiving the funding that the Victoria Foundation has been holding for us for a few years, and so we will be exploring options for expanding our programming in the Charlie White Theatre. People in the community have remarked about how they largely see tribute acts in our theatre, and there are lots of those seeking stages to play. And those acts provide stable revenue for us, but we would like to expand our own offerings as well. Our theatre manager, Caitlin North, has been receiving great feedback from patrons about the various cultural experiences that they would like to see locally, and so I would encourage people that if you've got information or things you'd like to see happen at our theatre, please let our theatre manager know. She's very receptive to planning and talking to people about supporting other cultural experiences. And I wanted to mention too that we are looking to purchase a new Yamaha C7X grand piano, which is a big expense for us. We currently have a Heinzmann which has begun to show its age and is requiring some significant restoration work, but we hope to be able to donate that to a suitable donee once we have acquired our new one. And then about our rentals, as mentioned, it's dance season. So those clients contribute a significant amount of revenue, but it is also a huge impact on our building, including the washrooms. Lots of clogged toilets and glitter, use of paper products. It's also a very busy time for our techs. So for every one of those dance competitions, it's like 14-hour days, 15-hour days for them. It's a very long time. So they're probably having a well-earned rest right now. And just to give you an idea of the scope of some of these competitions, the Versatile competition that we hosted in April, when it was held previously at the Tidemark Theatre, they had more than 8,700 people attending that competition. So that gives you an idea of the numbers that we had in Sydney for the past few days. It started on Friday, so it was over the weekend. And also, I just wanted to mention, you can see that in the visitors through the building for client services, we did have a little bit of a reduction from 2023, and that was due to the abbreviated VHA, the vaccine clinics that were there. They had a shorter amount of time than had happened before. And I did want to mention something about Blue Heron Park, which technically I know is not in Sydney, but many Sydney residents use the park, so I thought I would mention that we do continue to enlist partners to help us with park maintenance and potentially add to the activities that are available for people to pursue in the park. Until we can get some support for that maintenance, our staff make weekly visits and walk the trails to make sure they're safe and that we don't have potentially any unhoused people camping or having fires or leaving garbage, but we do rely heavily on park neighbors and trail users to bring issues to our attention. So I would just encourage people to give us a call if they see things happening in the park that we should know about. And about our building, most of the mechanical systems in the building are from the original construction in 2001. Over the years, quite a few failed components have not been replaced, so beginning with the most important, our facility staff have begun catching up with those repairs. And one, I think it was someone actually in Sydney that had reached out to both the town, and then that was passed along to us about the street light fixtures along Bevan, that they were not working. And so now those have been overhauled. Many of those fixtures had fallen into disrepair due to the ballast failing, but they've now been retrofitted with LEDs that don't require ballast, so we can service them in-house. And that was a project that was done in partnership with the town of Sydney. We really appreciate our collaborative working relationship with the town that extends beyond the administration staff to the parks and public works as well. People always comment on the gardening and things, and so we always let them know that it's the town of Sydney that does all of that work for us. In the more than 20 years of operation, as you can imagine, a few items need to be replaced. The roof and the HVAC system being the most critical. We will be considering a fundraising campaign to assist with that project, as preliminary costs are estimated at $1 million. And I did want to mention that the reader board is still very high on our list. Retrofitting the space in the tower is proving to be a high cost endeavor. We are considering other options that might give us more flexibility and visibility. And we are hoping to come to council in the near future seeking feedback with a presentation on some of the options that we have narrowed it down to. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we have an association with a wide variety of community groups. This is just a small sample of them, but we do have a lot of wide-ranging activities at our center. And that's all. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Not seeing any questions, so I want to thank you, Denny Warner, and Board Chair Sheila Fay for
I'm going to sneak in.
Okay.
for the.
I've never
please.
done this before, Cliff. I'm sorry to
Well, please come forward.
interrupt.
The microphone is yours.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge how much it has been a pleasure in the last 2 years to be working with Denny Warner. It's been a really treat to know how a centre should be run and how successful she has made our centre. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And congratulations to all the volunteers and staff, to the volunteer board, to the volunteer members who help make it click, but also to the important staff from the top all the way through the organization. Wish you continued success as well. We're going to next turn to item 13C, which we move to the next presentation slot. And that is the Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. We have a presentation, and I was turning to Ms. Nelson. The consultant will be presenting online this evening? Oh, sorry. So I'm about to welcome Michael Coulthard from Diamond Hen Consulting. I think you're aware we allow about 10 minutes for presentation. We will turn actually to Chief Mickelson to provide a staff report after that, and then turn to questions of either yourself or staff.
Of course, yes. I was briefed, and I've made this quite short, even though the report is very large. So,
Great.
No problem. This is the clicker. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Mike Coulthard. I'm a professional forester. I'm one of the principals at Diamond Head Consulting, based out of Vancouver. Very proud tonight to be presenting the community's first, or the town's first, Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. A bit of background. So with wildfire planning, after the 2003 Okanagan wildfires that were so huge, the province started the Strategic Wildfire Prevention Initiative. That was used to fund these types of plans. They've been going on for quite a while, but there hasn't been a lot of uptake from a lot of communities into the recent decade or so. This is funded by the Community Resilience Investment Program, which is administered by the Union of BC Municipalities. This is the Sydney's first plan, of course. It examines the wildfire risk in the community and sort of lays out a plan. Most importantly, which I'll get into, it allows the community to access additional funding for key action items out of the plan. sorry, before I get into the into the timeline here exactly, Sydney itself isn't exactly what you think of as an interface community up against a forested area. However, as we're seeing in the last decade, a lot of wildfire events that we see, and the big ones we see, the risk from wildfires isn't so much at the exact interface of the wildfire and the communities, as much as the embers that get thrown from these wildfires. So Sydney's in a position where it doesn't have a lot of a forest interface. It does have some, but they're not very high risk. However, there is a lot of large forested areas on the peninsula, on the islands, and what we're seeing is as climate change is increasing the risk of our summers and the wildfire risk, more extreme weather events, as we're seeing bigger wildfires and larger wildfires, which are affecting communities that weren't traditionally thought of as being interface communities. So this plan outlines the risk to Sydney, but more importantly, it really outlines a plan which really emphasizes public education and awareness and coordination and cooperation with other jurisdictions. The timelines for this, we started last year in springtime. We completed field assessments through the summer. There was engagement in the fall with the community. This was done by staff and ourselves. The draft plan was completed by the end of last year, and there's been a bit of back and forth with staff and the province, which brings us here, hopefully for adoption tonight. The engagement process, we had a nice time here. There was an online survey. There was a pop-up event downtown where we had very nice weather, which was great. There was an in-person community information session at the fire hall. In addition to that, staff consulted with First Nations, with some key stakeholders and other municipalities. Now the plan itself, as you know, is very large. It's somewhat of a templated document. The province requires that it follows a certain structure to go through. There's 26 recommendations. They sort of follow 7 key themes. These are education, legislation and planning, development considerations, interagency cooperation, fire-smart training and cross-training, emergency planning, and vegetation management. 14 of these recommendations are considered high priorities, and most of them are eligible for CRI funding. So this is the first step in accessing a whole stream of additional funding to fund these action items. And I won't get into the details of all these priority actions. I know you've read through them. One thing to clarify, the numbers don't necessarily relate to the priority of those themes. It's more how they're lumped into these different disciplines. Some of the key things, there's 3 key items that you need to ensure this can be funded. First one is the plan has to be updated regularly, so it has to follow the current standard. So usually every 4 to 5 years, these plans are updated. There is funding available for these updates, though, and they usually aren't too extreme. The second one is participation in the Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee, which the town already does. The third one is having a Fire Smart coordinator. So this is a key one. It's actually hiring an additional position to work through the fire department, and their job solely is implementation of the plan and these action items. So those are three key things. A lot of the other recommendations, as I was saying, there's no key recommendations around treating fuels as it would in a traditional interface situation. There's a lot of recommendations around public education and awareness, distributing information. The city can only do so much about private lands, for example. So a lot of that has to be voluntary. So incentives and awareness and making sure people are aware of what they can do on their lands to make their properties more resilient is a key part of this plan. Dealing with green waste, for example, is another one which is already being done by Sydney, but there's a lot more that can be done about awareness and mitigating fuels before they're dumped into the forest and those types of places. Another one is land development applications. In an interface community, we might recommend a development permit area. That doesn't really necessary in Sydney here. However, as people are coming in for land development permits, you can distribute information about how to make your property more resilient. So this has to do with roofing, siding, and in particular landscape design. So landscape design is a key one, dealing with flammable vegetation and your landscape design around your community and maintenance of that. A few other things in the official community plan: recognizing wildfires as an actual hazard is very important. Reviewing some of the bylaws, particularly related around trees and tree management, tree species, landscape guidelines, those types of things. There's small tweaks that can be made to some of the bylaws that can really help in the long term in terms of making the city more resilient, and especially these private lands. There's a recommendation to coordinate with other jurisdictions to acquire what's called a structure protection unit, which is basically a trailer full of sprinklers and hoses and pumps. There's training that goes along with it. It basically can be deployed ahead of a wildfire in a community, creates what's called a humidity bubble, basically wets everything down so you don't have to be there to directly attack this wildfire. Very effective in these cases of these oncoming fires with embers, showers, and those sorts of things. And the last one I'll say is a Fire Smart coordinator would assess critical infrastructure, it's called. So municipal buildings, critical infrastructure around water, sanitary, power systems, making sure, again, those structures and the landscaping around them is resilient. And again, there's funding available for actually changing landscaping, actually changing some of the sidings of some of these critical infrastructure units. So there's a real wide range of infrastructure and landscaping sort of funding available, which is really sort of the power of this plan. And finally, sort of in terms of an action plan moving forward, in the plan, there's a table which summarizes these action items, what they generally cost, the resources needed. It is a long-term plan, so the concept of these plans is over time, as there's redevelopment, the community becomes resilient in the case of a wildfire event. Overall, the risk is assessed at being as a moderate, and again, the greatest risk is from sort of a larger wildfire and ember showers into the community. However, the forested parks that are in the community, although the vegetation type is not highly flammable, what we're seeing in the summertime during these extreme weather events, there very could well be an ignition there. And this could be from the forest affecting those communities, or from those communities, a structural fire, then moving into one of these forested areas. So again, the coordinator it would be responsible for communicating with a lot of these residents in these interface areas and distributing information. So these relationship building is a big part of this coordinator's position. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to get into too much more detail with you. Again, the plan is a meaty document. It's sort of meant to be a first step in this provincial process to allow you to gain funding to move forward. Probably the most important one is hiring this Fire Smart position, I guess. So, anyways, but I've very much enjoyed working on this project and enjoyed working with staff, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Before questions, I'll first turn to Chief Mickelson to provide an introduction to your report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a little bit of background. In 2023, the town received a UBCM grant to support our first Fire Smart initiatives, and this is what's funded this initial community wildfire protection plan. And staff are seeking council approval to implement this plan as an education tool, and I think the key takeaway here is that the plan is a foundational document that identifies the risks that are unique to Sydney and prioritizes initiatives that we can take as a community to improve our urban interface wildfire preparedness and resiliency. And we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions for either our presenter or staff. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan first, and then Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I was trying to find the page again. I should have marked it better. But I had a question. There's about the landowner education, and there's an image in here kind of showing a property and about getting trees further back and having the trees spaced apart. And I thought, oh, this is going to really be a conflict that we have with a lot of our other policies as we're trying to increase the urban tree canopy. And if we have, you know, these tree retention policies, and of course there's, you know, just the aesthetics of it, other climate change mitigation, like we've been trying to get trees planted in such a way that it shaded houses and shaded streets. And so I'm wondering how much work gets done towards kind of making those things conflict as little as possible, because I feel like we'll kind of be pushing on one side and pulling on the other, and really confusing our residents.
I would defer to the accredited forester.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I have to say that is probably the biggest conflict with these wildfire plans, and it's happening everywhere, is there's a direct conflict between urban forestry, climate change initiatives to retain trees and our urban forest, and then for wildfire mitigation, you want to create a fuel-free zone or a barrier between buildings and fuel. And on the coast here, the conifers are the biggest problem. They're the most flammable species, so there are options. There's usually a balance that's met between allowing deciduous trees to come a little closer. There's places where if the trees are taller, for example, you might allow trees to be pruned up and side-limbed. The risk from conifers can be reduced by getting rid of the branches on the ground or near the ground, and having irrigated turf grass. So it depends on the community, and that's where I was saying the review of your bylaws is a real critical piece and kind of a balance. But usually there's some compromises that can be met. But for example, things like conifer hedges are a big problem. Conifer hedges are often very dry. The inside is very flammable, and they're like a dense little wick of flammable vegetation that often lead right up to buildings. So even creating breaks between the buildings and hedges is an important thing. So
Okay.
I think, and again, this is where it just depends on the property and the owners, and that's where a fire smart coordinator position, that's a lot of their role, is going in and talking to these owners and strata managers and talking about options. So and then slow, as I was saying, it can be a slow process, even if a little bit's done over time and some deciduous trees are planted and a few more are removed. It's just it can slowly be changed over time.
Okay,
But-
one follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
So I think, and following up with that, we also have the groups. Do they ever speak with, say, I'm going to give the example of the Shaw Ocean Discovery Center. It's a very small native pollinator garden, but they put one in, and they're kind of the rage. So the native pollinator gardens, one of the things they encourage landowners to do, of course, in addition to like no mow May, which is fine because it's green, but is to retain like the dead stems of things, because native bees nest in that dead wood and things like that. So like, don't clean up your yard in October because that's where all the native insects. And I got really into the permaculture, and as I was reading this through, being like, wow, my wood chips and all my dead woody debris and my leaf mulch, it would have made you cry. And so I'm wondering if any of these, if the Fire Smart coordinators go through and if they are able to talk to some of like the native plant, like Habitat Acquisition Trust and the people who are kind of pushing those to see how they can change the guidelines they're giving homeowners who are trying to sign up for these like habitat certification programs where they retain certain things that seem to be at odds with this. And is that something you know of people doing already, or is that something that we would kind of want to follow up if we were to get a coordinator?
I think, that's specific to the community, and here the wildfire risk is not that high, so I would hate to see that happen here. If you're a community right up against a dense conifer forest, those immediate interface houses might have a bit stricter rules.
Okay.
But definitely there's Fire Smart has landscape guidelines, really great landscape guidelines on what species are fire resistant and which ones are flammable. But really the intent is to get the real big hitters, like the big conifer trees and hedges. It's not to go after things like pollinator gardens and those great initiatives that are going on. So but definitely that's the public education piece is important, because that can be a misconception, I think, when this with this type of a plan. Yeah.
Okay, great. No, thank you. That's helpful to kind of narrow the focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gunnar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Coulthard, for your presentation and for the plan and the report. It's very thorough. It's very informative. I actually enjoyed reading it. It was lengthy, but no, it's there's a lot of great information in there. And I attended the in-person communication at the community safety building, so I was there that night when you, with Deputy Chief Harmon and Ms. Barner. It was an excellent presentation, and I found just want to thank all of staff as well with it, and in particular having a discussion with Deputy Chief Harmon and his perspective on bringing this forward, kind of from what he saw in fighting wildfires in Kelowna and seeing the transfer of embers across the lake and not being, and that bringing into focus for me, just thinking, okay, we're not near a forest, but you know, if you've got strong enough winds, it can travel, like in the report, up to 2 kilometers, and that's not far really, but it is far, and before you know it, you got a structure fire and from some far away. So I appreciate all you've done in here. And my questions are more towards our staff, and because of the recommendations in here, particularly with the tree preservation bylaw, and I'm wondering, are we considering incorporating any of these into our tree preservation bylaw at any time in the future?
Through the mayor to the councillor Grant, I'll take an initial stab at that. Myself and engineering have had preliminary discussions about how this may affect, you know, other companion bylaws. And again, you know, Councillor Duncan brought forward that some of this might be in conflict. We would again try to take a measured approach. Like myself and Deputy Harmon, like I was in Kelowna in 2003. In Clinton and in other places like that, you know, dry desert, arid places with very dry ground fuels, considerable ladder fuels, you know, explosive, you know, tree species that are primarily conifers, much different than that we have here. So, again, I'm not an expert, but I do have a basic understanding, particular of, you know, we'd have to look at it in context. We wouldn't look at it if we would be applying the same separating distances or fuel types as you would, and a soy use is not applicable to you know, the West Coast and in some things like that, and that's something we might need to reach out and get a little bit of help with, but we have had those discussions, and we would put that into play and perhaps bring back a bit of a draft plan before we enacted anything.
If I may, and I was looking further in the document when it references, and this is probably for other staff, maybe Ms. Verhagen, because I don't think Mr. Newcomb's here, with regards to the OCP, and they mentioned that it's not put down, and the zoning bylaw in terms of landscaping. I know we're going through a potential amendment for both documents with regards to housing and how our housing needs assessment builds out in terms of those documents and whether they meet those needs. Is that something that we can look at this time, or is that something that would be kind of outside the realm of what you're undertaking at this time?
Ms. Verhagen.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Garnett. So as was mentioned in the wildfire resiliency plan, the Local Government Act for BC does allow the creation of development permit areas for fire protection. And I've seen that done in other municipalities, including ones in the CRD. So we would work with Chief Mickelson and Deputy Chief Harmon about looking at whether we need to incorporate any design guidelines into our DP areas, or whether we do need to go so far as to creating new DP areas for this. But it is something that we have permission to do, so we would take a look at that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Duck, then Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to staff, if I may, in the development of the program, the educational programs, I'm just wondering if there's any consideration given to some sort of incentivizing homeowners to change their canopy. For example, the most fire are the cedar hedges and the cedar stands or conifer stands. And I'm wondering if there's some sort of initiative that can get people to start looking at how they change that, because certainly those are well-matured trees, and as Councillor Duncan has mentioned, that would impact our urban forest canopy. But is there a way in which we can sort of move people from having more fire-resistant landscaping and maybe incentivize them to make that change? Because obviously they're not going to be willing to take down their hedge or their trees if there isn't some way to motivate them to do so. Thank you.
Yes, well, through the mayor to Councillor Duck, well, the best motivation is a fire, and then it's gone. But nevertheless, especially with some of those hedges that we have in Sydney, they are they will burn explosively. But I do know that through partnerships with Canadian Tire and through the Fire Smart program, getting rid of, or like free chipping, and then purchasing drought resistant but non fire aggressive species are part of the program as well. And I don't know if you have additional information you can.
Yeah, I've seen, like, there's sometimes during Tree Canada Day there'll be tree vouchers or replacement tree vouchers that the municipalities will sponsor and work with nurseries to replace trees and get deciduous species or less flammable species put in. Yeah, the alternative also, which can be a problem with wildfires, people want to get rid of trees and they use wildfires as an excuse to take trees down, right? So that's the other thing to talk about with the tree bylaw is how you decide when people are allowed to take trees down, if they're in that, maybe not too close, but close enough that they can try to justify that it should be taken down. So it does become quite complicated with trees and finding that balance.
Thank you both, and I think that's going to be the bigger challenge, is that is motivating people to make that change. Yes, a fire can do that, but certainly the cost of taking out a significant cedar hedge or a row of cedar trees or conifer trees is substantial, regardless of the fact that there are replacement trees available. It's the actual landscaping change that will be disincentivizing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Mr. Edwards next.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make the sort of general comment too, that much of this work would be iterative over many, many years, in that we would be identifying programs. If the plan was adopted by council tonight, we would then work to establish and develop programs that were appropriate to our community and move in that direction. But it may take many, many years to see some of this change occur. So.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Coulthard, and perhaps just from your perspective and Diamond Heads and the work that you do, I can only imagine. I would think another motivational component to this for homeowners and communities may well be the insurance industry. And if you could perhaps just speak to us with respect to what you've seen in other communities who maybe have learned through difficult lessons, the importance of taking these steps and adopting these types of plans and moving forward proactively with them in the context of the insurance sector, and how difficult it can be for homeowners in communities who perhaps haven't adopted this in the manner that they wish they had.
Yeah, I think that might be the thing that might really start moving these initiatives forward. I think that's happening in the States right now, in California and the southern. There's certain communities that can't get insurance now. Almost like a flood zone area, and so I know there's a lot of work just for insurance companies in the States just doing wildfire mapping, so it's definitely happening down there, and usually we follow. I think it would happen in the interior first, in the Okanagan, but at some point it might move to the coast here. Right now there's a lot of the Fire Smart coordinators working with residents who want to fire smart their properties. There's funding to go in and actually do the work for them, so it's all voluntary. But I think at some point I sort of feel that there will be a requirement or a reduction in your insurance rates if you have a certified Fire Smart property. It just seems to make sense, and I think that's where things will go. On the coast here, though, we're not as volatile as the interior, so I think it will happen there first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Keefe.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. First of all, I just was looking at the information you provided in terms of community information, and I realized that it seems like the main point of the study or the plan is to identify areas that might be of risk, for fire. But you also mentioned that demographics also will influence risk, and then the appropriate planning that has to take place afterwards. And I note that you did make mention of Sydney's elderly population, and so that's something we will have to take note of. I'm just wondering, in other plans that you've done, other communities, are you also factoring in the needs for like persons with disabilities in terms of how they might be affected differently. I was reading some information on the LA wildfires and some information from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and the comment was that persons with disabilities are 2 to 4 times more likely to perish in a wildfire or some other sort of disaster. So just wondering if that's something that's come up, that you've considered at all, and how you might incorporate that into future plans.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's, the plan, as you can tell, has a lot of, it stays kind of high level, so it recognizes that, but the recommendation would be to incorporate that into emergency planning related to other natural disasters as well, which I'm sure it is here.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, air quality is another one which I didn't touch on, you know, creating, air quality zones and community centers and places where people can go. So definitely it's an important factor, demographics, not so much touched on in detail in this plan, but definitely in the community's emergency planning process, which involves other hazards as well.
Thanks.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if
I'll just follow up with my understanding and talking with or communicating with staff in the afternoon, and I guess to your point about larger emergency planning, and just through you, Mayor, through staff, just confirm my understanding that we do have or staff has an action item in their plans to address broader emergency response planning with a hyper focus on persons with disabilities. So that would apply whether it's a wildfire or a flood or an earthquake, and just want to confirm my understanding on that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Keith, that is correct. One of our emergency management task items, and some money has been earmarked, grant funding, was to look at our hazard risk and vulnerability analysis and the hazard response, the specific hazard response plans, whether that be for wildfire or pandemic events or any. There's about 35 hazard specific response plans. Each one of those would be, they need to be updated every 3 to 5 years, but when they are updated this time, it'll be with a greater emphasis on looking at it through a lens of persons with disabilities, which we have not done in the past. So that is an outstanding action item. You are correct.
Yeah, okay. And so I presume whenever that comes up for review, consultations would take place with our accessibility committee at that time, and they'd be able to provide input into the
That
process.
is correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Councillor. I have a question before going to Councillor Duff as a second-time speaker. 2 questions. The first for the Chief is, are we aware of where North Saanich is in a similar process?
Yes, to the Mayor, North Saanich has a plan in place, and they have a full-time Fire Smart coordinator. Person's been in place, I'm going to say, approximately 6 months. And we just participated last weekend with a Fire Smart initiative at Canadian Tire, so we're already teaming and working together collaboratively to push out those education initiatives, but they have a much larger kind of, let's say, scope of work than we do.
No, thank you, and thank you again. In the report, it speaks to the addition of a half-staff person at this point, and the possibility of working in conjunction with our North Saanich neighbor. I'll leave that question there. Thank you. Councillor Duck for a second time.
I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Please go ahead.
And I so move that the Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan be approved and implemented as an educational tool.
Second?
We have it moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
Nothing to add. I think this staff and the consultant have done a great job in preparing this and engaging the community. I think that we need to start moving forward on it. There certainly is, the risk is moderate, but it's always there, and I think it's important to have something in play. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I'd take a moment to thank Mr. Coulthard for your work on this project, and thank our chief and other staff who worked on this as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you, gentlemen.
I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Council, we've been together now for just over an hour, and we may have, in my calculation, perhaps another hour before we come to the Torque Masters' request for their car show this year. And given we have 3 of their finest leadership in attendance and who've been patiently waiting, I would seek a motion that we move that to the next agenda. 13C to the next agenda. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion carries. And Mr. Demare, that moves you forward a little bit to provide an introduction. We'll just wait a moment here. I'll turn to Mr. Demare for an introduction to the report, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this staff report brings forward a request from the Torque Masters Car Club to host their annual car show on Beacon Avenue, adjoining side streets and parking lot C on Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, as well as a fundraising event on 3rd Street on Saturday, August 2nd, 2025 to benefit the Sydney Lions Food Bank. I would just make a note from previous years, the footprint is some modifications to the footprint for the event. The second section of Beacon Avenue east of 1st Street has been eliminated to address some concerns with pedestrian movements at the roundabout, and Sydney Avenue between 3rd and 4th Street has been incorporated into the footprint for this proposed year's event. As part of the event, the club is also requesting council approval for a beer garden on 3rd Street as part of the Sunday event, and that's being run by the Beacon Brewery, as well as the mini car show. They're asking for the closure of 3rd Street the day before on the Saturday. Again, that's for a fundraising event for the Sydney Lions Food Bank. The report includes recommendations for the events, road closures, and use of sound applications and conditions of the approvals. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Demare. I'll turn to colleagues in just a moment for any questions. If you did have a question of the Torque Masters folks who are here this evening, you could motion to invite them into the meeting and then pose your, we pass the motion, you can pose your question, but I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions for staff as well. Councillor Duck?
If there's no questions, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Well, I'll just, Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you, Mayor. Forgive me, Mr. Demare, if I've missed it in the list of requirements here, but I'm just comparing this to the most recent application we had with respect to street closures for bike race, and there was some coordination requested with the RCMP on traffic management, as I believe. I know that hasn't been in a request of this event in past, unless I've missed it in here. So not to compare the two events directly, but just to clarify if that is the type of conversation that organizers have or the town has with the RCMP with the nature of street closures.
Through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul, prior to each event, the town staff, RCMP Emergency Services do meet with the event organizer to go over their traffic management plan and security for the event, so that happens prior to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no other questions, Councillor Duck, if you could proceed with the 3 motions separately.
Okay, I do have a question prior to that, through to staff regarding insurance. Is there a requirement for insurance on this program above and beyond the towns?
Yes, there is as a condition of approval, they do need to provide a liability insurance for both events.
Thank you. All right, I'll move recommendation number 1, that the Torque Masters Car Club be authorized to use sound amplification and to close the following streets and public parking lot. 1, Beacon Avenue from 5th Street to 1st Street, 4th Street from Sydney Avenue to Bevan Avenue, 3rd Street from Sydney Avenue to Bevan Avenue, 2nd Street from Bevan Avenue to Beacon Avenue to Bevan Avenue, Sydney Avenue from 4th Street to 3rd Street, and parking lot C on 4th Street at Sydney Avenue from 4:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday, August 3rd, 2025, to accommodate their car show event, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report dated May 12th, 2025.
Second.
We have it seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
Nothing to add.
Seeing no discussion, I'll call a question. All in favor? Carries unanimous. Please continue.
Number 2, that the club, in conjunction with Beacon Brewing, be permitted to hold the proposed beer garden on August 3rd, 2025, on the street in front of 9829 3rd Street, subject to the following conditions. A, that the beer garden does not block access to neighboring driveways or obstruct emergency vehicle access. B, that the Beacon Brewing allow beer garden patrons to use their restrooms. C, that the 3 weeks in advance of the event, the club shall submit a detailed plan identifying the area of the beer garden for approval by town staff. And D, that the Beacon Brewing provide the town a copy of the special event permit for the provincial liquor and cannabis regulation brands for this event.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Again, I'll turn to the movers. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimous.
And 3, that I so move the Torque Masters Car Club be authorized to use sound amplification and to close 3rd Street from Beacon Avenue to Sydney Avenue from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday, August 2nd, 2025, to accommodate vehicles for a mini car show and fundraising event for the Sydney Lions Food Bank, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff report dated May 12th, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to Torque Masters for a bigger show this year. More event. Going back to our agenda, we were next moving to bylaws, and under item 5A, we have bylaw number 2288, the financial plan for 2025 to 2029. We've given first readings at a previous meeting. We have a recommendation to adopt. Councillor Dutt.
I move that the bylaw be adopted.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you. And item 5B is bylaw number 2289, the tax rates for 2025. We've given readings at a previous meeting. Councillor Duck.
I move the bylaw be adopted.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And 5C is bylaw number 2291, tree preservation bylaw amendment number 4. We have a report. I'll turn to Ms. Clary, please, for an introduction.
Good evening. This amendment proposes 2 changes to the existing tree preservation bylaw. The first change includes refundable deposits that would be taken at the time of development. Council recently approved a DP with this as a condition for a development on Orchard Avenue, so it would work similarly to that DP condition that was already approved. The dollar values for a specimen tree, that would be a tree of significant value, would be $10,000. A town-owned tree would be $5,000, and all other protected trees on the property or within 4 meters of the property would be $3,000. And this dollar value would be returned as long as the tree is healthy within a year of construction completion. It's really just to get developers and contractors to put in that extra effort to make sure they're retaining trees through development, and to be taking that extra look too, because some trees should have probably been removed before construction begins. So there may be more tree removals initially as a result of this, but we will see less trees, being damaged as a result of construction. Hopefully, that's the desire. And then the second change is something that's come up at the last couple council meetings, is allowing easier removal of leyland cypress trees. They are fast-growing trees that they have a short lifespan, and they start losing large limbs later in life. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. I'll turn to colleagues. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Novick.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you to staff, I'm curious, is there a problem that we're trying to fix here? Are we finding that developers are intentionally destroying trees that now need to be, or that we feel should be protected in the future through a bylaw such as this?
Through to Councillor Novak, I don't think there's been any intentional damage of trees. However, more care could be taken in some situations to prevent damage of trees. So there have been a number of trees that have died recently within a year of a development completion. I don't think it's negligence of anyone's part, but more care could be taken to retain them.
And you feel that by having a bylaw such as this in place, developers would take better care of those trees?
That is the desire, because if the tree dies, we would retain the deposit, so they wouldn't get their funds back. So yes, that is the intent of this change.
And how long after the completion of the development would the death of a tree trigger the forfeiting of a deposit?
So that's item number 11.11 in the bylaw amendment. And so a developer could request the inspection of a tree after 12 months, or 12 months after letter of acceptance, or 2 years after an occupancy permit, or at the discretion of the director. And in the tree preservation bylaw, the director is the director of engineering that it's referring to. So really when a developer feels like enough time has passed that the tree, or they have an arborist who has looked at it and they can confirm that the tree is healthy and there hasn't been any damage as a result of development, they can then request that inspection. And it says of the director, but really it'll most likely be the town's arborist going out and inspecting it and confirming that the tree is healthy and that the funds can be returned.
Okay. And again, just to confirm in my mind, we haven't really had any situations where a developer has been found negligent and has allowed a tree to perish, or has, through carelessness intentionally, or through carelessness has damaged a tree to the point where it dies.
Not that we're aware of. However, there have been trees that have died shortly after developments have occurred. So nothing that, we would say was negligence, or we could prove was negligence in any way, but there have been situations recently where trees have died shortly after development. And those are trees that staff have worked fairly hard to retain during the development, and it's very unfortunate to have the tree die within a year of the development completion, obviously. So this would be an encouragement to the developer to just work harder to make sure their trades stay out of the critical root zone, or various other things, make sure people stay out of the critical root zone of the tree. And then if the tree did die, we then would be able to retain the deposit and use that for planting trees elsewhere in Sydney, or back within the location, or within the boulevard, or wherever trees can fit.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Duck?
Thank you, Mayor, and through to staff. I'm assuming you just mentioned that this is to protect the trees more subterranean than above ground, as in past, that this will give more protection to the root ball in the excavations they're doing in development. Is that sort of the direction of this change?
I mean, yes, it's harder to prove what was done underground, obviously, if a tree does die, and nobody witnessed an excavation in a particular area, it's really hard to prove afterward what happened to the tree. If someone, took an excavator and hit the top of a tree, it's very obvious, and we say, you killed that tree and here's your fine, right? Whereas if a tree is, damaged underground somehow that we can't even tell after the work's done, this would allow us to keep funds for that.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a great idea. And do you feel that the value you've attached to the security deposit per se is enough to create the incentive to protect that root ball, and you won't have a developer saying, well, that's just a cost of building and I'll accept that?
Through to Councillor Duck, we hope so. I mean, these values do seem high for certain properties. Like there's some properties that may have 15 significant trees, and then that's $150,000 being retained. And then there may be other situations where it seems like this is low. So in the bylaw amendment, we do allow, if the developer wishes, they could get a third party review of the trees to determine the value of the trees, or have the trees assessed is the right way to say it. So if for example there are lower value trees, they could have them assessed, and that could be the security deposit that's held. But in some situations this may be low, but it's really it's a good baseline to start with.
Thank you. I think it's a great value to the community, because I think we have lost trees. It hasn't been documented, but I know of some that have been lost because of that damage done in development that wasn't recognized at that point. So thank you. I appreciate this coming forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. I'll turn to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. One question, through you to staff. What's the fine for chopping down a protected tree currently?
Through to Councillor O'Keefe, our bylaw, it's a $1,000 fine. However, if it was like a negligent act, we could take them to court and fine up to $50,000, depending on how the court proceedings occur. But like our base ticket that we would issue is $1,000.
So a follow-up on that, have we considered making the deposit and the fine the same amount? So I'm just thinking, you know, a developer, I guess, potentially could say, I don't want that tree there. I don't want to tie up my money. I'm just going to cut it down. It's $1,000 cost, and then I'll just say, oops, sorry. And then I understand that we could take it to court, but that's a significant expense. It's also difficult, as you said earlier, to prove that there was any negligence, and it would be a lot of time and expense on our part. So any thought to just making it the same amount for a deposit and the same amount for a fine?
Through to Councillor O'Keefe, I believe the maximum fine allowed under a municipal bylaw is $1,000 without going to further court. I'm not sure if Ms. Nelson or Mr. Edwards know otherwise, but in all of Town of Sydney's our bylaw, our municipal ticketing bylaw, the maximum fine is $1,000. That may have changed recently. For some reason, it's maybe triggering that it's maybe a higher amount now, but previously, I believe it was $1,000, but we could look into that. The challenge with that, though, is we have one set fine amount, and sometimes it may be, you know, a single-family homeowner who just didn't know, and the tree looked spindly, and they had no idea that it was protected, but it was actually protected, and then that same fine value is applied to all tree removals, right? So it does, you know, we could look at that, increasing the fine amount. I would just say it would have to be a measured approach.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's worth looking into if it's something you're going to do anyways, and maybe having a range that would give you flexibility so that the homeowner, as you explained, wouldn't be hit with a $3,000 fine, but a developer who may be willfully or should have known better took something down. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I do have a question, or a couple of questions, and that is through to staff. Is it understood that when developers are excavating, they are to have an arborist on site?
Through to the mayor, yes, that is typically required. Yes.
Okay. So, is it a possibility, or have we considered that in those larger developments or developments where more trees are involved, that we might seek to have one of our town arborists attend such excavation? I realize it could be a time burden, but
yes, we unfortunately we don't have the resources internally to do that. It would be not sustainable if we were to try to commit to doing that.
Okay, well, thanks for confirming that the developer is required to have an arborist, certified arborist on site. Councillor Duck.
I'm prepared to move first reading.
Go ahead.
That bylaw number 2291, Tree Preservation Amendment number 4, be moved forward.
Be given first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes.
The bylaw 2291, Amendment number 4, be given second reading.
Second.
Second. This is a time for any discussion. Seeing none, I'll call. Sorry, Councillor Novick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I certainly support the town's efforts to retain trees as much as possible. I'm not in support of this bylaw. I feel it's overkill. I feel it's trying to use a hammer instead of a fly swatter to kill a fly. Our staff have pretty much confirmed that To date, they're not aware of any situations where this bylaw would have been triggered. I think developers in general are fairly responsible and would do their best to follow the town's bylaws. I think this is unnecessary. I feel that the cost of construction is high enough as it is, especially for individuals who are developing their lots. I'm just not sure why we're doing this at this point in time. I haven't been given a rationale for that. Since we're not seeing a large number of trees being destroyed by developers, and those that may have died following a development, our staff have said that they're not convinced that they could actually trigger the forfeiture of these deposits under those cases. So I don't understand why we're doing this. If people are not feeling that they should be following our tree preservation bylaw, then I don't see how this is going to have them do it. I think it's wrong. I think it's the wrong time when construction costs are increasing dramatically for all types of developments. And we want people to be able to build residences that are reasonably affordable, certainly more affordable than they are today. And this simply adds another layer of bureaucracy, another layer of cost. Yes, it's a deposit, but that's money that a developer has to put forward. It becomes a part of his financial plan. He has to pay interest on that money because he's typically borrowing it from a financial institution. I think it's unnecessary. It's not fixing a problem that we have, so why are we doing it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I was just going to say I don't wish to speak for staff, but maybe they can clarify again that my impression, my understanding of what staff was saying was that they have actually come up with this bylaw because there have been, in fact, a number of tree deaths within a year of development being built, and that they could not prove it because it wasn't a damage to a tree above ground. But what was likely happening, although staff is being very, very careful with their language because of their professional obligations, is that they were probably damaged below ground by subsurface destruction of too much of the roots. And so what they're hoping to do with this is ensure that people are actually extending the root guards probably out further to the drip line and having their operators maybe be better educated about the distance to go with trees. But because it's underground and by the time they see the tree die, they cannot prove that the roots were damaged. This would be triggered in these cases because the tree would have died within the year. And if your tree dies within the year, you forfeit your deposit, and we don't have to prove that you were negligent or that you even accidentally damaged the tree. It's that the tree died on your property. This, should get people to be more careful about protecting their root zones. It may be that some people will be innocently caught because their tree had some disease that was going to kill them anyway, but presumably a balanced approach would mean that our arborist would look and be like, this tree had a disease, we're not going to do this. But if this tree was otherwise healthy and it just straight up died, we're not going to prove that there was underground damage, we're just going to assume it and your deposit gets taken away. Is that staff?
Through you, Mayor, Councillor Duncan has correctly interpreted the intent of the bylaw is that staff have experienced tree deaths shortly after developments and within 1 year after developments that staff believe would not have otherwise occurred if the tree roots were protected better, and that the current protections haven't been sufficient to mitigate that. And so while it is correct that we haven't been able to adequately identify the cause of those tree deaths, and we haven't taken the effort to pursue that in any way or any sort of recovery. We believe that this proactive measure would help reduce those types of tree deaths that we have been witnessing.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you're...
No, thank you. That did clarify. My understanding was correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor, sorry?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank staff for this. It's just what it is an extra layer of protection for the trees in our community. We're losing multiple ones every week to climate change deaths. We're going to lose more because of the change in Bill 44 to the way we're developing our properties, the small scale multi-unit housing, which we'll speak to later. We're going to lose more trees. And I think you're well aware, I walk the community regularly, and I have myself seen tree fencing not down when it's supposed to be up while developments are going on. And when they're required to be. And so although you can't prove that that's what happened, coincidence for me doesn't exist in my world. There's a direct line usually, and I think there has been significant amounts of these, enough of these have happened over the last 10 to 12 years in my time of viewing it, that it's worthy of having this extra layer. If nothing more than just to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do and taking responsibility for it. And yes, it is a bit of an added cost potentially in terms of interest and whatnot on a loan. But at the end of the day, our community has to be livable, and we want the people who develop here to be responsible for the people that are going to live here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Novick is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. We're next moving to, we don't have any development. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Duncan?
I'll move that the tree preservation bylaw be given third reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Novick is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. That will come back to a future meeting for consideration of adoption. We'll next move to item 7, which is adoption of minutes. I would look for a motion to approve the minutes from our April 29th council meeting. Moved by Councillor Duck.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Garnett. Any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None are opposed. That carries. We're turning now to item 8, which is business not completed at a previous meeting. At our council meeting on April the 14th, a motion was moved and seconded as follows: that the town does not fly the U.S. flag at Beacon Park and Seaport Place for this summer season. There were 3 council members absent at that meeting, and so a referral motion was made to refer it to a meeting when all members were in attendance, and this first opportunity is this evening. So given that that motion was moved and seconded on the floor, and then it was referred to this meeting, we don't need it to be moved and seconded again. It is now live on the floor. As the mover, I'll speak first and then turn to the seconder. I'll try to be consistent with what I said at the previous meeting, and that is the U.S. President wants the sovereign country of Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. He is using trade tariffs in part to destabilize our economy and our country. His tariffs are having an impact on businesses, nonprofit organizations, including governments. It's affecting people's jobs, their livelihoods now. Trump has heard loud and clear from Canadians that we disagree with his tariffs and that we categorically do not want to become the 51st U.S. state. I'm opposed to flying a U.S. flag on town property while Donald Trump is being hostile in this way towards Canada. The flag is a symbol of the country and what it stands for, and Canadians do not agree with this hostility to us as a sovereign country. And Canadians are flying more Canadian flags than ever to symbolize what we stand for. I can appreciate, there are different views on this, as we can appreciate, and I appreciate that some Canadians, particularly those perhaps with American family and friends, find this a sensitive matter. I doubt Americans are checking which towns and cities are flying an American flag when they decide to travel in Canada. People welcome people. I have welcomed American customers in my business, and I know other businesses are doing the same. And as the Mayor of Sydney, I welcome U.S. citizens to visit our town and enjoy all we have to offer, and I'm confident the vast majority in Sydney will also welcome them. I'll turn to the seconder, which was Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I continue to support the motion. From my perspective, as perhaps as debilitating as the trade component to this discussion is, it's not really behind my rationale for supporting the motion. To me, it's with regard to that direct threat on the sovereignty of our country, and to me, it would be highly inappropriate from my perspective to see us recognize the flag of that country that is made threat through their leadership, the sovereignty of our country. And so to me, it's that element of the discussion that I think is most important. Staff note in the report that a flagpole at the foot of Beacon Avenue continues or will continue to fly sister city flags, and what's suggested here is Anacortes, of course, Cairns and Nimi as sister cities. And so I think that spirit of friendship and cooperation remains, not just through, as the mayor suggested, through our engagements with visitors to the community, but also through that symbol on our city streets as well. So I'll yield at that point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I'll remain strongly opposed to this measure. I think by removing those flags, Donald Trump will be categorically winning, and the only person who will be very happy, as the mayor has noted, most Americans probably won't be checking to see if Canadian cities have taken the flag down. And as Councillor Garnett noted last time, many of the ones who come here might not even understand that there's been tariff threats. If they're not reading the right news sources, they won't know why we did that. But Donald Trump will probably be taking notice. He reads the news very carefully, and what he's going to see is that a lot of Canadian cities are agreeing with him when he says he is America and he is the voice of America. But he isn't. The United States is the oldest democracy in the world, is the first modern democracy in the world, the oldest continuous democracy in the world, and most of the democratic constitutions in the world borrowed strongly from what they did, ours included, which is only as old as me, actually. It's Canada in the same year that we brought ours back. But to take the flag down, which is a symbol of a nation and the values of that nation, what that constitution and what it stands for, and say that Donald Trump and the senile ravings of a very senile old man, right? He danced for 2 hours to Ave Maria at one of his rallies while people literally fainted in front of him. And to conflate that with, the world's oldest democracy would be a great tragedy. I mean, the United States isn't even the Senate or the House. They're still also just temporarily elected officials. And so far as I know, there have been no actual motions that have gone through the Senate or the House which have said that the nation of America is actually attacking Canada or implementing things. Everything that is being done by presidential decree, a power that Obama brought in as a wartime measure act and then was never repealed. Everything that's being done by Donald Trump is in essence extra legal to American political forces. America is under attack from within. And when we say that we're their neighbors and that we want to stand with them and that we feel betrayed by their lack of friendship, I can't imagine a stronger signal we could send than to say that we support the American people and the values that are currently under attack by Donald Trump, both against us and against themselves to a far greater extent, than to continue flying that American flag and making clear that we understood what it stood for. And that's why we won't take it down, just because Donald Trump lets drivel fall out of his mouth as usual. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mayor. That's quite the picture. Gotta get that out of my head now. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Sorry. I continue to not support the motion. The SBA has written a letter, and I'm the liaison now, and I've spoken to them, and they're not in support of it. And then there was multiple people at the table, various businesses that were hopeful that we wouldn't move ahead with it at our last board meeting. And as Councillor Duncan has spoken to, for me, this isn't about this is about the ravings of one person and a bunch of unelected people that circle around him and just basically say you're great and everything you say is like the Bible, but it's not. And so I guess I'm worried about when we do this, what message is it we're actually trying to send? I don't want to like get into the nitty gritty of this, and it's just like we can be proud Canadians, and we can fly our flags and wear flags. And I saw a car today with 2 flags on the front, and it wasn't even a limousine. Just people are all in on it, and that's great, and that's fabulous. But I don't think Canadians, by nature, taking a flag down is more something that Americans would do if it was reversed. I don't think that's not my kind of Canada. That's not the way I view things. I think that we should be trying to be more welcoming, and the flag, for whatever reason, is a symbol of welcoming for people from the United States. And as I said previously, you probably could find out of 10 people, 9 people that don't even know this is going on. They don't know that Trump's made these comments, it's frustrating. I absolutely get that. But I think in the grand scheme of things in our community, I want our community to be welcoming to everybody. And I think not having the flag there sends a message to people whether or not they knew it was there or not. Information gets out there, and maybe people won't come here because of it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But you know, it's showing that we're better. We want to rise above and be better than what we're facing from one person and a handful of people around him. And I don't hold all Americans responsible for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Novick and then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm strongly opposed to this motion. I hear what my colleagues are saying. I agree with them, with Councillor Duncan and Councillor Garnett. I believe that if we take the flag down, the U.S. flag down, then Donald Trump wins. And that's something we don't want to do. Regardless of the political machinations of that very small cabal in Washington, I don't believe that a majority of the American people support what is going on today. Notwithstanding that, we here in Sydney are a border town. All we have to do is look over the ocean. We see the San Juan Islands. We have ferries that go to the U.S. every day out of Victoria. There are still Americans coming to town. They are our guests. They are our clients. They're our friends. They're our family. I think we do a disservice to them to take the flag down. It's not sending the right message by removing that flag. We are still welcoming to our guests. We are still accommodating our clients. We are in the service industry. Our restaurants, our hotels, our retail shops. This is how we survive. This is how we make our daily bread here in Sydney. And so I don't believe that taking the flag down is going to accomplish anything. It's not sending a message to the people who we may feel are causing these problems. They don't know, they don't care, and they're not going to care. And it's certainly not going to change their attitude. All this having been said, I also believe that in the last couple of weeks, this whole question of the 51st state and the tariffs, et cetera, is a moving target. It is certainly not something that we can say with any confidence today that this is the case and this is going to be the case moving forward. Things change on an almost daily basis, and we're going to look pretty foolish if we pass such a motion and we find out that within 30 days a new tariff agreement has been negotiated, and you no longer hear the rhetoric from Donald Trump about Canada being the 51st state. I think Mark Carney did a terrific job in Washington toning down that rhetoric. And other than Donald Trump saying quite feebly at the time, never say never, we haven't really heard very much about the 51st state from that point onward. And I believe that it's going to die a slow death. I don't think that taking down that flag does anything positive for our town. And if we're not going to accomplish something positive, then why do it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'm as frustrated, I think, as every Canadian is to hear this kind of rhetoric. However, I don't think taking down the flag is the way to respond. I'll start with a little story about my sister and her husband. And so they're entertainers in the music industry. And so they had, I think it was 15 to 20 shows scheduled in the United States. So they were planning to tour in California, Nevada, and Arizona. And so they were really nervous about going down there. Some entertainers have chosen not to go, but they decided to go anyways with some trepidation. At the first show, they talked about, should we tell them that we're Canadian? You know, because they usually say, we're a band, we're from Vancouver, BC, and that sort of thing. And so they were nervous about that. But they decided they were gonna tell them. And so at the second to last song, at that first concert, one of the guitar players said, yeah, I want to let you guys know that we're such and such band. We're from Vancouver, Canada. We know that there's lots going on between our countries right now, but we want to know we're here to bring our joy in our music and our love from Canada to all of you. And so they were shocked that they got the biggest standing ovation they've ever received. Every person, thousands of people in the theater were on their feet cheering for Canada. And we love Canada, and we love you guys, and we're sorry for what's going on. And so that was repeated through 3 different states every single night. So getting to the point of colleagues' comments about what the people in the United States are thinking, I think that's a good indication of what they feel towards us. If you're not moved by that warm and fuzzy story, there's...
You got more?
She has more sisters.
I do. No, but just the economic aspect. So, you know, the biggest impact with these tariffs, if they carry on, is economic, of course. And so loss of jobs, loss of income. And so we have an opportunity to, by welcoming Americans that do want to come here, and just anecdotally hearing them being afraid of, if they come to Canada, you know, they're going to get their tires slashed, or they're going to be well received. And so I think from, you know, just a self-serving perspective, we want them to come here, and flying their flag is a symbol that they are welcome here. And word gets back to the rest of wherever they came from, that, you know what, Sydney was a welcoming place, and you should go there and spend your money. The other thing we heard on the news today from our premier is that there's a big campaign on to bring in American health professionals. And so their big campaign to bring them to our province. And so I think that's another way that I think we want to show Americans as much as we can that we are welcoming to them. We do want them to come here. And I don't think they should all be held responsible for, I know a lot of them voted for him, but you know that he, I don't want to hold all of them responsible for those terrible actions. So I think we should continue to welcome them, whether it's economically or just in your heart, you think that's a good thing to do. So I will oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I will be supporting this motion because that flag is a symbol of the government in power. And it's not a symbol of the American person, and it is not a symbol of their culture. That would you be flying the Russian flag at this point in the town of Sydney? Because it's representative of a government there, not of the people. And so it is important to recognize that that's a decision that leadership made, and whether it's a cabal or whatever, that's the current leadership. Over 50% of the population voted for that person and put him in power, and he's making decisions. So that flag represents the decisions of that nation. It does not represent the people. And so us flying the Canadian flag represents our nation and welcoming to those people that come here, as it has in many, many years. So it's not going to change how people feel coming to Canada, but it will and send a message about what we think of how the decisions made south of the border are being made. That we do not support them, we do not support the tariffs, we do not support the indication of the 51st state, never say never. All of those ideals are coming out of that current government. And so that government's represented by the flag. That is the nation's flag. That is not the representatives of each American. And we have heard, and I've heard from many Americans as I was on the road, how disgusted they are with that decision. But that flag, that stars and stripes, is the symbol of that government's decision, not of each individual. And so I think by our demonstrating that we are not in support of that nation's decision, that leader's decision, that we're demonstrating what we think of that. And I think it's important to demonstrate that to those that will still fly the flags of our friends, of NIMS, of Karens, and demonstrate we have that support for them. But we do not support the decisions of a national government that wants to see us as the 51st state. And it may not have been said in the last 2 weeks, but it's certainly still very much out there and still very much evident that we are being considered by the government in current power in there as a state. And I find that offensive, and I don't want to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. So, as I indicated in my comments, there are differing views, and we are representative of the community, and there are differing views on council, and we shouldn't be surprised. So, I think the one good thing about our local government is that on difficult decisions or decisions where we have differing views, we respectfully express our views, and we accept each other's views on that particular matter, and we're ready to continue the future business of the town. So without seeing further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Novick, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Garnett, Councillor Duncan are opposed. The motion is defeated. Thank you again, Council. Yes, Councillor.
I don't know if this needs a motion arising, but I know, as you stated, this was obviously contentious in our community, and there'll be a lot of divided emotions, and a lot of people will have strong reactions who won't necessarily have seen this discussion. And I know you're the only one who really has a store on the main street where you'll probably hear enough about it. So I'm wondering if we can put forward a statement about why this decision was made, if we can get an article maybe put into the PNR that kind of puts this discussion front and center about the approach that we took, what we heard from, you know, the SBIA, and what the position of council ultimately ended up being, so that people will know why we took the decision we did. And
I'll turn to Mr. Edwards.
I would you know, offer that it would be in council highlights, potentially as a resolution from council. But if council wanted something more above and beyond, then it would, I think that would need to be a council resolution and agreed on by council.
Yeah.
I'll second that if
you
want to be more succinct about that.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor, do you wish to make a motion?
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think on my feet to think how to phrase it here, but I guess that my motion arising would be for communication, I guess, through town's communication channels, to put forward that a discussion was had at this council meeting night about the request to lower the American flag and what the decision was made.
I think again, we have been consistent in releasing council highlights on important matters that have come before council on a regular basis for a few years now. And so I think if your motion was that we provide an update in council highlights, that staff can take that direction.
I think they were saying that if it was in council highlights, they don't need the motion, that this motion would be to kind of give that an additional boost, say like on the social media or something, but it sounds like they might already put council highlights links.
I'll turn
in
back
the media.
to Mr. Edwards or Ms. Judson.
Yeah, there will be council highlights that are always part of follow-up to council meetings. And it would also be pushed out on a regular communication channels. I thought, Councillor Duck, you were perhaps seeking, Duncan, that you were perhaps seeking something more elaborate, more fulsome than what we would simply be reporting out on the decision by council. If you wish to have something more sophisticated, then I would definitely want that to be presented to all of council and approved by council.
Okay. Maybe I'll withdraw it because I'm not sure. It would be something like an official statement from the mayor, and it would be a PNR. And I feel I don't want to volunteer him to put together, the staff to put together something when it was the mayor who brought the motion forward in the first place. So maybe I'll withdraw it. We'll see what the city or the town's response is, and if we hear a lot of feedback and we need to release a statement, then we will at that point. No, thanks. I'll withdraw.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Point of order?
Yes?
I would suggest a recess. We've been in session for 2 hours.
Certainly, I'll call a recess until 8:05. Thank you. Okay, we'll look to convene here in a moment. We'll reconvene, and next we're moving to council reports, and we have a verbal report from Councillor O'Keefe, our liaison to the museum, Sydney Museum and Archives.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Sydney Museum, they had their AGM on April 22nd. Much of the info that was covered there was probably covered in the report they gave to us not too long ago, but just a couple highlights. They had their most visitors ever this year in the history of the museum, which was 21,700, which was an increase from the previous year by about 8,200. They also saw record amounts of donations from visitors, and financially they're in a good position. They mentioned that costs have increased significantly, and so that increase in revenue from donations and other sources is just helping them keep their heads above water. There were 3 board members who stepped down as their terms had expired, and they have 2 new board members, and there's 1 vacancy remains, but I believe they have been in contact with someone who may fill that spot shortly. They have a new summer exhibit that's up and running now, and it's called Health in Space, Daring to Explore. And it's about exploring the health challenges faced by astronauts in space, such as variable gravity, radiation, and isolation. And it talks about Canada's role in advancing health research and how discoveries in this field will be essential for the success of future deep space expeditions and may also help health or medical challenges here on Earth. And the museum was successful in obtaining a grant of $13,000 from Department of Canadian Heritage in order to run that exhibit. The waterfront signage project, as we know, that's been ongoing for a while. They've had a number of delays brought about lingering staff changes with their organization and other organizations that they're dealing with, and just a complicated project having to deal with multiple stakeholders. So they had hoped to have it in place by this month, but it looks like that's not going to happen this month, but hopefully sometime this summer. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions on that update? Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to my colleague. You said something at the very beginning. I just want to get it clear in my mind. You said current traffic was in the order of 21,000, and you said that was up 8,200 from the previous year. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's a huge increase.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for confirming the good news. We'll next go to item 12, which is committee reports. Under 12A, we have the minutes from our committee of the whole meeting on May the 5th. We're receiving those on our agenda. And are there any corrections to those minutes? Not seeing any. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan, who chaired that meeting, to take us through the recommendation, please.
I'll move the recommendation that the, do you want me to move them separately or together is okay?
Together's great.
Okay. That the plan for a residential parking program be endorsed, and 2, that the on-street parking policy be brought to a future regular council meeting for adoption.
Second.
Okay, have it moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on. Sorry, Councillor O'Keefe.
Yes. So there's just a couple things that I wanted to highlight.
Your microphone, Councillor. Thank you.
Sorry. Just pulling out my right set of notes here.
Take a moment.
Yeah. And I'll try very hard not to repeat what we already discussed, but a couple things I wanted to mention, especially in the light of the letter we got tonight and the speaker who spoke about the issues of parking on Resthaven Drive. And I thought it was timely because one of the reasons I'm opposed to this is that I don't think it deals with the underlying issue, is that we're not providing enough parking. We're not demanding enough parking in developments that are going up for visitors and and others. And so what I'm afraid of this again is that, as we've seen on Rest Haven, is when there's a lot of development goes up, and if we're not providing, demanding adequate parking and visitor parking, then this is going to continue to be a problem throughout our community. And with this one, for this particular area, as I said before, we're just pushing it out into another neighborhood. And I think there was a comment last week about that a lot of it is visitor parking, and that part of the issue, I think it's assumed that the issue with downtown is that there's employees who are parking on those side streets. And if we put this in place, then they'll go park at the Mary Winspear. But I think what the speaker tonight highlighted for me was that it's not just, employee parking is not the issue on Rest Haven. It's an example of what happens when we don't provide enough parking. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'd wanted to kind of link this one up to the speakers that were here tonight too, because I listened to all of the comments that they had, which they all attributed to the fact that there was on-street parking, but I noticed that not a single one of their complaints was actually caused by the fact that there were cars parked on the street. The fact that there's no sidewalk on one side of the street has nothing to do with that fact that there were cars there, but rather that when they were built, people didn't build sidewalks. So no sidewalk to a bus stop doesn't have to do with on-street parking and whether or not it's there, right? And that hasn't been prevented from building sidewalks because there's a bus stop there. The fact that somebody tried to pass a bus that was at a bus stop and almost caused an accident, that's already illegal. That has nothing to do with there being on-street parking. Speeding is already illegal. Again, on-street parking actually usually prevents that, because when visibility decreases, people, if they're good, responsible drivers, slow down. So, in fact, that should help with that problem. We also heard that she almost got hit by two I'm sorry.
Councillor, if I might interject, we have a motion on the floor regarding our residential parking pilot program.
Right.
I do appreciate that
Thank you.
another colleague did make reference to a speaker this evening who spoke to a perceived parking issue in another part of town, but if you could draw a more of a direct link between
thank you.
and this residential
So
pilot that we're
what residential
considering tonight.
pilots do is make it so that there is actually turnover of parking, so that people who are parking for business or for residential uses are actually given priority on the street, or for shorter term parking, and then residents manage to get in there and they don't have to compete with people who are using it for going into town. We have actually, not to my memory, ever had a coterie or a neighborhood come in and say, hi, I live in this neighborhood. I'm a 2-car family. We cannot find parking on the street in front of my house for a second car, and we all have this problem. We'd like you to introduce a parking permit. The only people who complain about parking and there being other people parked on the side, and that they have to witness the other people being parked on the side, and they assume it's going to cause problems, but they never say it causes a problem for themselves. We never have groups of people come in and say it caused problems for me as a residential parker. So I want to have this come kind of forward as the thing that it was trying to initially address that came from some neighborhoods. This one I think initially was south of Sydney, but they had less of a problem than 3rd Street, which is why it was going out to the neighborhood to see if the perceived problem that came to council was actually even a problem for the residents on that street, rather than conflating it with other people's observations, which frequently have nothing to do with the fact that there's cars parked on the street, but everything to do with the behavior of people driving. And increasing parking and to allow more cars would actually increase every single one of these problems, because it would have more drivers on the street. So managing the parking will address all of the issues, both for this neighborhood, if it goes through and if it works, and in other neighborhoods, if indeed it is the residential parking that is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Mr. Edwards for a moment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We just noticed that there may be a bit of a challenge with the recommendation as it currently reads. It is staff's recommendation that the second part of the recommendation be that the on-street parking policy be adopted. This in fact is the future meeting that was being referenced to in the committee as a whole. So
I shouldn't have read it. I just didn't even notice. I strike number 2 from my reading. I withdraw that part.
No apology needed from you, Councillor Duncan. That was a problem with the way that it was worded as a recommendation.
Okay, so for the record, number 1 will stand as it is, and number 2 will read that the on-street parking policy be approved.
Correct. Thank you.
Be approved or adopted. Thank you. Thank you to the mover and seconder. We're good with that. Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you had the floor.
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Novick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still going to support this. I think I supported it last week. The reason being is that, it's exactly for the reason that Councillor Duncan said, that there are problems elsewhere in town, or there may be. I'm thinking particularly about Albay. Resthaven certainly comes to mind. I have friends who live in the area, and they often complain. But Councillor Duncan is correct. Nobody has come to us and say they can't find parking for their cars. They don't like the fact that other people are parking there. But the way this pilot program is structured, in that one would need a 2/3 majority resident support for that pilot program to be tested, I would be surprised if we can get 2/3 support in any group of citizenry. That's a very high standard. And there would have to be a really serious problem for that to happen. So I think passing this this motion now sets the program in motion, but it doesn't really establish a permit program per se. It establishes an attempt to get a permit program in place by polling residents of a particular area and hoping that we get 2/3 majority. So I think the citizens themselves will decide whether or not such a program is needed in any particular area. So I have no problem passing this motion, because if we don't get that 2/3 level of support, there isn't going to be a permit program. So let's see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe is opposed. The motion carries. The motion carries. Thank you. So we're next moving to item 13B, which is an amendment to zoning bylaw for small-scale multi-unit housing. Mr. Newcomb, I was, I think, going to attend virtually, but turn to Ms. Verhagen, perhaps. Good evening.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening. So this report is coming forward as a result of small-scale multi-unit housing legislation. As it says in the report, we did make changes to the zoning bylaw last year to be consistent with Bill 44 provincial requirements for adding in the permission to build up to 3 or 4 dwelling units, depending on lot size. On every lot that previously the only permitted uses, primary uses, were single-family or 2-family dwellings. So that was done by the provincial deadline of the end of June 2024. Since then, we have looked into it more for properties with multifamily zoning of RM5, RM6, and RM7, as well as the RM zone on the west side, RM7WS, and found that the same legislation does apply to those. As it says in the report, in those zones, there is a minimum lot size stated of 750 square meters needed in order to build them out with townhouse or apartment uses, those multifamily uses permitted in the zones. On lots smaller than that, up till now, you've been able to rebuild a single family where there is a single family, or rebuild a duplex where there is a duplex, or put in a secondary suite. But we've found that the new legislation for small-scale multi-unit housing does apply to those too. So this amendment is being proposed to bring our zoning bylaw in line with that legislation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thanks. I did forward some questions to staff this afternoon, and thanks for those responses. I just wanted to cover off just a couple things for the public's interest, perhaps, and just to clarify my understanding about our housing target. So I initially had some concerns about if those RM zones, we were originally planning to have higher density there, and if we're now going to allow SMU, small, lower density, concern about whether we would be able to meet our housing targets. But my understanding is staff feel that we're still on track, that would not have a significant impact.
Yes, to Councillor O'Keefe, that is the case. So the same question was asked earlier, and the response that staff provided was that staff do expect that the small-scale multi-unit developments on the RM zone lots would occur primarily where a lot is kind of by itself, where there isn't really any other lot adjacent to add on to it to get that minimum lot area of 750 square meters. Or where there's a single-family property owner that wants to add a secondary suite or do a smaller addition of units for their own personal reasons. The former situation would lead to an increase in overall density in the town in general by allowing units that would not otherwise have been permitted by the current RM zoning that needs that minimum lot area. So we would see an overall uptick in the number of units in the town, which does get us closer to those housing target goals. While it's possible that the latter situation may deter some development on RM zone lots, we don't think it's going to be significant. And we are definitely well on track to meeting the housing target orders set by the province.
Yeah, okay, good. Yep, thank you for that confirmation.
Thank you. We do have a recommendation. Councillor Dutt?
I move the recommendation that staff prepare a bylaw to allow small-scale multi-unit housing on lots less than 750 square meters in area that are located in RM zones and bring it to council for consideration.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
Nothing to add.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. So we're now turning down to item 13D, which is 2024 financial statements. So I'll turn to Mr. Hissick. Ms. Chen for an introduction, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As required by the community charter, we're looking to obtain council's acceptance of the town's 2024 financial statements. The various components of the financial statements and the year's results are discussed in detail in our staff report. As a reminder, financial statements serve a different purpose than the budget variance report that you are used to getting on a quarterly basis, and we will follow up with that report at next week's Committee of the Whole meeting to contrast the two. Financial statements are prepared according to national standards for an organization of our type, and they measure the resources coming into and going out of the town's coffers, whereas the budget variance report focuses on actual performance versus the approved budget. Finally, we should acknowledge that the local government financial statements are different from traditional private sector statements and may not be easy to interpret for those who are unfamiliar with them. We try and address that in our detailed staff report, but we will be following up with even more context in the management discussion and analysis section of our upcoming annual report, which will be published in June. With that, I'll open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our turn is colleagues, if there are any questions. Seeing none, we do have a recommendation. Councillor Dutt.
I'll move the recommendation that the town's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2024 be accepted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Next, we're turning to item 13E, which is tender award number 2025-005 for 2 dump trucks. We have a report. I'll turn to Mr. Robinson, please, for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just moving in on this, just a little bit of background. We've been looking for these trucks for a couple of years now. Staff have done a fair bit of work looking at makes, models, variations of different trucks, and through the delays and uncertainty and supply chain issues, We've narrowed it down to a particular make and model of truck that we were looking for. Freightliner was the model. Its parent company is Delmer. They are assembled in Canada. Again, it was the desirability of the powertrain, Cummins diesel, Allison transmission. These are all components that staff are familiar with on other trucks. So we kind of went with a specific look on that. There's the light duty M2 and there's the 108 SD Super Duty model, which is more compliant with what we want to do for snow removal applications on that. So our old trucks are both around the 20-year mark, which is about the life expectancy that we expect out of these trucks. In the past, the salters, the plows that are on the two existing trucks have actually been put onto those trucks from previous models that we've had. They're sitting on their third cabin chassis right now, so it is time for them to be traded out as well. So in the future, when we do replace these trucks, those snow plow components should be able to go with the next model that comes during the replacement time. We did look at electrification, seeing what was out there. Certainly the larger truck industry is just in its infancy. City of Vancouver, Surrey has started to electrify some of their larger fleets, but certainly they're not standalone units. They've got other diesel and gas powered trucks in their fleets that if they did have a problem with that, they'd be able to make those adjustments. When we think of emergency uses that we've identified in here for portable water transportation, snow removal, if we did have an extended power outage with standalone electrified vehicles, might not be the right application for what we're looking for. But certainly as things improve, there may reliability is up a little bit, there may be opportunities to look at that. We did our best estimate on pricing based on what the manufacturers were telling us, and we came in at about $500,000 for the two units. And obviously, not so much with tariffs, it's more raw materials and assembling and manufacturing costs. What was suggested we needed for budget wasn't quite there. Again, we looked at trade-in capacity. What we were offered by the one wasn't exactly what we thought we could get. So to be honest with you, I think we've done about as good a job as we can to get the costs at where we're at with a reliable set of equipment that staff feel very comfortable in working with. The local company that we're recommending pick, we've worked with them for a long time. The snow removal components, the truck bodies, all those assembly pieces will be done up in Nanaimo by a Canadian company. The truck box will be built on the island. The snow removal components will be coming in from stateside, but again, we're not expecting too many significant tariffs on that, but time will tell. Delivery date is late in the year or early in the new year based on this. So the longer we wait, the more vulnerable we get with the equipment that we've got. I know it's a bit of a big ticket item, but these are two of the larger units in our fleet, and certainly be willing to answer any of the questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Colleagues? Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Robertson. And I think it's great that we're using a local dealership, and for the reasons you've suggested in the report, but I think it's also great that we support local. My question is probably not so much to you, but through maybe to other parts of staff. In terms of the recommendation, we're obviously you'd be comfortable with the recommendation as is, but I'm just thinking in past when we make adjustments to extra funding from reserves, we make mention of that, and are we comfortable with just, I was wondering if we should just say that we should up the amount that we're willing to spend on this, given that it was in the financial plan at 500,000. We're comfortable with this wording, or would that specificity be something you'd be liking to see?
Thank you, Councillor. At this time, I'm comfortable with it. There's still a chance we'll come in under the overall budget for the year, and part of this expenditure won't be made until early next year, so I'm comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for the question. Councillor Dupp?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Robbins. Is this a net price here? Is there any value going to be received from the two units? Are you going to keep them in operation, or are we going to be selling those off?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Duck. Yeah, the two existing units we've got, we will be looking to sell them privately ourselves. Again, the fee that we received for the trade-in on the tender was an option that we put in there. And certainly we felt a lot more comfortable looking what's on the market and doing our research that we should be able to get at least double that on the open market. Knowing again, even though they are a little long in the tooth as far as age goes, but they are well maintained. We've got a complete set of records of all the maintenance that has been done on them. The mileage is relatively low based on the trucking that we do. They do take trips into town to pick up product, but for the most part they do stick within the footprint of Sydney. And the only other thing I can say is for the large trucks, the bigger excavation projects that we have, of course we contract out that trucking and we're getting an extremely good deal on that. But these are the emergency jobs that might happen late at night, our ability to work our small connection crews and volumes of product that might not need the full 10 tons that you would get in a larger truck. So these are about half that size, but they do provide a significant amount of versatility to us. And the smaller the truck for the snow removal on our narrow streets is a benefit as well.
Thank you. So the price here is a gross price, and we might get some money back in terms of the sales of the other two units.
Correct. If you look in the report based on the base price, that's kind of what we're looking at. We're going to get some revenue back on some trades. We're going to get our GST rebate as well. We'll apply for that once we make those payments. So there will be dollars coming back that'll reduce that recommendation, that amount in the recommendation based on that. So I think we'll be more closer to 600,000, 610 by the time the dust settles on everything.
Thank you. And I'm anticipating that we'll get a 20-year service out of these based on past service vehicles.
Yes, correct, Councillor Duck. That's right. That's kind of what we're anticipating. The trick is always making sure that we set aside enough money in reserves that in 20 years we'll know what the replacement value of the next unit is. So if we based it on what was happening today, we would probably want to put $30,000 in for annually into the reserve for these two trucks, knowing that they'll be replaced in 20 years. Are they still going to be worth $700,000, or are they going to be worth 1.7? So how much money we put in is a factor that we have to deal with a little bit. So.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good value for something over 20 years. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a recommendation. Or Councillor Keith, go ahead.
Oh, just a couple questions. So as long as we put in our order for May 31st, that price is locked in. Or
it is on the cabin chassis. As far as the build on the components on it, there may be some tariff changes that come in off that. Okay. But we're not anticipating it being so much. And again, it's a bit of a moving target right now, based on some of the announcements that were made about tariff exchange with the U.S. and China. There may be other things by the time we take delivery that this might have all flattened out and it won't be a concern anymore. But there is a tiny bit of vulnerability, but we won't know until we hear from the dealer that, hey, the trucks are here, we're sending them up to Nanaimo to get outfitted. That's when staff again go in and do the work on the shop builds and look at the components that they're adding for us and things like that. So.
Okay, thanks. And then I think it's probably a Mr. Hissick question. So it looks like the overall cost is about $7,008. So we would pay that up front, whatever it turns out to be. And then as we sell off those other trucks or we get rebates and things, those monies that we get back just flow back into the reserve. Is that how it works?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck.
I'll move the recommendation if we're ready to move ahead. That the town purchase two 2026 Freightliner Model 108 SD cab and chassis for dump body, plow and spreader and hydraulic controls provided at a total price of $708,800, taxes and levies included, from Velocity Truck Centers in Saanich, BC.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you.
So we're turning to 13F, which is the monthly building report. We're just receiving it for information. Are there any questions on the report? Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff. I'm looking at the second page of the report, council approved projects without an issued building permit. It doesn't really, I'm assuming the building permits haven't been issued, but it doesn't really say if there are any in process. Are any of these projects in the process, or have they applied for building permits yet?
Through the staff, Ms. Verhagen.
Through to Councillor Novak, yes. If you like, I could go through the list and tell you. Sorry?
That would be great, thank you.
Great. We are reviewing a building permit for 2060 White Birch Road. No building permit yet for 9522 Lochside. We are reviewing a building permit for 2180 Beacon Avenue West. We have received a demolition permit for 9667 5th Street, but no building permit application has been received. We issued a building permit for 2312 Orchard on May 1st, so that will show up on the May report. It will not show up on the April report that you'll get next month, but it will show up on the May report. 2242 Harbor Road, actually that has got a building permit, so that one should not be on this list anymore. My apologies. 9633 3rd Street, there was a building permit issued for that April 22nd, so that one you will not see on this list next month. And we are reviewing a building permit application for 10473 Rest Haven. So yes, almost all of these projects are moving forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And about the 9522 Lochside, have you had any communication with the developer as to why there hasn't been an application for a development permit? Our understanding was that they were going to be building in 2025, and we're already halfway through that year, so it's concerning.
Yes, through the mayor, they have an active subdivision application, so they're working through the items required for the subdivision as part of one of the steps in their development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Seeing no further questions, we're now turning to correspondence and the item that I raised to item 15.4 that I raised to 14A. It is a letter from Kathy Yunker with regards to complaint with regards to pets in our multi-sport courts and racket courts. A concern with regards to feces, food, and other concerns. I just wanted to remind council that we received a letter at a previous meeting that Councillor Garnett spoke to, and Councillor did pass a motion requesting staff to bring back a report on this item. But the reason I raised it is because the writer says, I look forward to a response from the Town of Sydney Mayor and Council indicating what actions will be taken to address this ongoing racket court issues. So if I could have a motion that the town respond to the applicant in terms of what it's in progress. Moved by Councillor Duck.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Garnett. All in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. And we have the remaining 5 items under correspondence for information being received on our agenda. We have no notices of motion. Our motion to go on camera, I'd seek a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Duck and seconded by Councillor Novak. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.